So, good evening, Nina Sabnani. Uh, it's wonderful to have you on our program, Art Matters. Um, just by way of a quick introduction, Nina is based in Chennai right now, and by her own admission, she's a putter together of lost and found objects, memory being one of them. Her animated films are rich collaborations with artists and folk fabulers and have earned critical acclaim. Her film, We Make Images, with Sher Singh Bheel, won the National Award in 2016. In 2021, she was conferred with the Legend of Indian Animation Award from Toons Media Group. She taught at NID Ahmedabad for 22 long years and at IDC IIT Mumbai for 15 years. Her students do her proud. She has served as a jury member at Annecy in 2024, SIGGRAPH Asia 2023, and Indie Anifest Seoul in 2017. At present, like I said earlier, she lives in Chennai and is associated with many institutions like Shrishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore and UPES in Dehradun. And of course, she still continues to maintain her old, relationships with organizations like the IIT in Mumbai. So welcome, Nina, to this conversation. Um, I would like to start with a very, very, motherhood question. Why does art matter?
My God. It matters because I think it makes us human. We can appreciate things without any transaction involved. It's not transactional. Art is a sharing, and it is expression. And we have a chance to express our worldview, uh, how we look at the world, how the world looks at each other. So I think without art, it would be a very difficult place to live in.
And why do we need to tell stories?
Well, stories are very important because I think everything is a story. Anything that happens to us is a narration of sorts. Yeah, memory is story, history is story. So I think stories are important because this again, um, it tells us what we aspire for, what our journeys, how we have traveled, what has happened to the world or to us, and things to learn from what happens in life. I mean, those kind of stories. So I think.
So in India, we have, plethora of indigenous, what we call as indigenous art forms and traditions. We have painters, we have musicians, we have balladeers, we have performers. Oftentimes, I wonder why don't we have as many writers of these traditions? Why are we such an oral culture?
I think because, oral is something for you which does not require you to know how to read and write. So I think the reach is a much larger when it's an oral thing. Writing is something which is limited to fewer people. I mean, we are a big country, so few doesn't mean few really, but at least in the spoken one, it also that storytelling in an oral tradition requires a listener. Writers can write, but they don't know who are their listeners. But in an oral thing, you can actually connect with your audience, and so I think. And also these old traditions have so many things with which they tell the story, not just singing, but also using props and things like that, visual images, like visual narratives with which to tell their stories, puppets. So there's so many ways in which stories are told, not just by words.
So do you at any time feel that we are losing that capacity at storytelling? Are the practitioners dropping in numbers, or are we at that cusp where we've recognized and we are rebuilding those communities?
I would rather say that we are on the cusp where we are rebuilding these communities, because I think there are more people interested outside of their traditional patrons and listeners. I think more people are interested in these stories, and many efforts are being made by so many, like yourselves, like you. So many things are becoming accessible to people with the technology, of course, but also this engaging with them, and on different platforms. So I would rather say that I'm very hopeful that these things are actually changing.
And you personally, tell us your story, your journey. How did you get involved? How did you, first of all, feel the need to get engaged? And then secondly, how did you come upon the medium in which you've chosen to, expound and propagate some of these stories?
So I must say that I had my background in painting. I studied in fine arts in Baroda. So I had no desire to be an animator. But one of my teachers, actually two of my teachers, one was Nasreen Mohammadi, the other was Jairam Patel. They kind of forced me to go to NID to study animation. And then that time I thought of animation as like everybody else thought, that it was just for children and. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll go learn it for a while, then I'll go back to my painting. Well, once I went to NID, and then we had lots of teachers from various, corners of the world would come there, and they showed us films from so many different places apart from Disney, because our exposure mostly was Disney. But they showed us films from the National Film Board of Canada, then a lot of Polish. I was very impressed by the Polish animation films because they were not about children. And then we had a teacher who came on a UNDP fellowship, and he kind of made us aware that we need to look at our own art practices rather than try to be like Disney, like find our own language. And it so happened that there was a fair, across NID. And there was a Tagore Theatre Center, where these fairs used to happen. So these artists, the folk artists from various places used to come and, display their work. And I came across these paintings by these Madhubani artists, which were on the dowry issue. So that time I had to do a project as a student. So then I asked them, can we, work together? So they said, you can buy our painting and you do what you want with it. We are not interested in learning animation. And so, and I was in my 20s. I really had no idea. Even even my teachers wouldn't let me go to Bihar to go and work there. They said, "Tum yahan baith ke, you do your work here." So anyway, I made that first film, and actually that really got me interested in looking at our art forms and and animate them. Later on, of course, I was able to actually collaborate with a lot of them, from Kutch, from Rajasthan, from Madhya Pradesh, the Bhil artists. So, but it started back then, just a chance.
Okay, so you started with Madhubani. Your award-winning film is about the Bhil,
Yes.
but you were most intensely involved with Coward.
Yes.
And how, tell us about that.
That was also, it's like serendipity, really, because I saw my first coward. I didn't even know it was called a coward, in a friend's house in Bombay in 1980. And I was really fascinated by it. And I said, "Ye kya hai?" They said, "Pata nahi kahan se, to we had brought it, but we don't know." Anyway, then many years passed. Then I had gone to Bilwara to look at the Ford painting, because I wanted to study it as a multimedia thing. I was trying to propose and argue for the existence of multimedia, communication happening way before the CD-ROM and all happened. So I was looking at the FAD from that perspective. And then I saw this coward in Kalyan Joshi's house. So I said, yay, I saw it, like, where is this? How? So he said, oh, this is also, isko bhi log baanchte hain, meaning this is also, recited. So I said, do you know anybody who does this? So he said, yes, I can introduce you to him. But he introduced me to the coward maker. And then that guy got the storyteller. And I was doing a storytelling conference in NID. It was called Sutra, Storytelling in the Digital Age. So we had a collaboration with MIT Media Lab, and we invited all sorts of people. We invited this storyteller also, and he came and performed over there. And one of the speakers was Dr. Jawaharlal Handu. He's a folklorist. And he said to me, I was telling him, I want to start a PhD, but I really don't know, where to begin or what to do. So he said, Ispe kado, nobody's done any work on the coward. Why don't you look at the coward? I said, but I don't even know where these people are. He said, that is what research is about. So then that's how, it was like, it was meant to be. I was supposed to, because after 1980, which was my first encounter with the coward, to 2006 is when I actually enrolled for the PhD. But in between, I did like a design, mercenary. I made a coward, which, you touch, and I made a screen. I made a digital coward. And but I had no idea about the tradition at that point. So it became a good starting point for me to engage with it more deeply, to understand. And actually, it really changed the way I looked at storytelling, the way I looked at the cover, and what all I did with it afterwards.
Fascinating, because I've also got a story out of Bhilwara. I have a project called Isa Nama, which I'm working with a miniature artist called Manish Soni, based out of Bhilwara.
Okay.
And he's the grandson of Badrilal Chitrakar. So it's now a project that's been on for almost 7 years, still continues. So Bhilwara is the place. Okay, before I get to why you chose the medium in which you have, done a lot of work, which is animation, once you decided on Coward, what was the kind of construct in terms of how did you go about, figuring it out?
So one thing I realized while doing the research, how do you engage with your participants? How do you, and I had an ethnographic approach, of course, but even then, and I had taken my camera, I was, recording them, live action and things like that. But then I realized that if I made an animation film with them, we would have less of that, the observer and the observed kind of a, position. Because here we were going to be working together. And so listening to them and, them arguing about some, like, that's where that Baat Wahi Hai, I made that film Baat Wahi Hai, which is two storytellers arguing about one story. So then I felt that the animation was appropriate because it allowed for the, in their lives, the way the real and the imaginary, the fictitious and the actual thing, comes together. I thought animation would lend itself beautifully to that. So that's why I chose. And also when we were making the film and we were discussing the stories together, they actually told me a lot more than they would have otherwise told me if I was in just an interview format,
Yeah, and I mean, I watched, Hum Chitra Banate Hain, and I must say, two things that did engage me most was one, of course, the actual flow of the story. I mean, it was fantastical on the one hand and very, very believable on the other. And then the other thing was just the fabulous colors, the the rooster, the drunk man, everything. It was just amazing. Even though it was in that sense impersonal, there were no real people. The flow of the story happened. So, do you reckon that animation is one of the more efficient ways to tell stories?
Oh, definitely, definitely, because animation is very privileged in the sense that you can speak not only with words, but you can speak with the design, you can speak with the material, with which you're communicating. You can speak with the characters. They can literally be that character without having to do anything, to say that he's a good guy or a bad guy or something. So I think it is very efficient, like you said, and it also is because already you have to suspend disbelief when you look at an animation. So it's very conducive to bringing very different worlds together without having to explain too much.
Yeah. But do you think uh, animation lends itself to wide dissemination in terms of the making of animation? It's a bit, uh, it requires skill, it requires probably time and money. Uh, so once made, it can get to many. To be
I
made,
don't know. I mean, it's not that easy to distribute your animation, once it's made also. Uh, you make it, you send it to festivals, and then you put it on YouTube, and that's the end of it. It doesn't really, short films especially, there isn't that kind of, you know, industry that will, is involved in distributing. There's a big industry in creating animation content, but there isn't one to look at the distribution of animation, even of large feature films, and people are struggling in the animation industry to reach a wide audience and also make it economical, for themselves. Not like Bollywood. I mean, it's nowhere near it.
so, we use whatever properties we have in terms of animation and film. Uh, but of course, it's not commercial. But the usage is widespread, and we also find, the thing very effective in the communicating and storytelling process. We create content for partner NGOs like Pratham, and
Hmm.
animation is one of the preferred, you know, way to digitally, because they have digital infrastructure at hand.
Yes.
So you create this and pass it on, and they have the ability to propagate widely. And so it is something that we find that, has widespread use. Uh,
Definitely, when you have a very clear, mm, audience in mind, like for example, Pratham knows exactly who its audience is and what they want to communicate. But for people like us who are making like independent films, like short films, there isn't that, you make it with a certain purpose, like say the wheel story, the Hum Chitra Banate Hain. We made it because okay, we wanted to talk about water, the issues of water, and there are such stories that there is a tribal wisdom, there is a uh, there are there are stories that exist already, and in a community which is otherwise associated with being what is it called, habitual offenders, and being called criminal tribes. I think it's very nice that one can bring a new perspective in the way people look at communities. um, but then what how might one reach a wider audience, or make it, I mean, it's there online, so anybody wants to see it, they can see it, but it doesn't have that kind of reach as yet, to the way, if it was an educational, say, animation, then it would be different. Yeah.
I guess also a little bit of, for example, in leather puppetry, we see the number of troops that were, in existence, say, 25 years ago, and it's a fraction today. So obviously there is some stuff that, one is the new age is not necessarily supportive of, this all night, week-long storytelling. No one
Yeah,
has the time or
yeah,
patience. The
nobody.
other thing is, of course, the government patronage in the past was extended for social messaging, but not necessarily that traditional stories.
Mm,
Uh, but then, when I went to places like Indonesia,
mm,
the same thing, there is a national pastime. And the patronage that's received, the corporate sponsorship, the government support is amazing. So, you know, when we went to Indonesia on a corporate visit, the dinner was a wayang kulit performance, you know, and obviously it was, the people were honored, the performers were feted and things like that. So there was a lot of support. So I think while we were away trying to tell these stories, you make animation films, we do all these Sarmaya like platforms and all that. I think there is some aspect to the patronage that is necessary and which may.
absolutely, absolutely. I can't agree with you more, Paul, because you go to Japan, the kind of support that animation has, the toy industry, the publishing industry, everybody comes together to make the anime. So and they pick on the mangas that are very popular, you
Yeah.
know. And so the publishing industry is puts in its bit. Then the animation, so they do the animation, and then you have the toy industry, which kind of creates these toys which are out in the market even before the film comes. So it becomes like, and they love animation in Japan. They actually line up outside cinema halls to watch the anime.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we don't have that, that kind of patronage as yet in our country. If it's free, people will watch it, but will they pay like 300 rupees ticket to go and watch? I am not sure.
Yeah. But I think it's also about hanging in there and creating a
We
longer
are not going
story,
to
right?
stop. We are
Yeah.
going, like, I see myself as a researcher. I'm just seeing what can I do with animation, what all can I say through it. That's why I'm very fascinated with making memory tangible through the storytelling, through the animation, extending the life of memory, because people will die, who hold these memories. They will be gone, but at least if we have it in the form of an animation film, it'll stay a little longer, maybe.
But is it also because we may not have done enough to embellish the core product of animation? Because if you see Japanese anime, there is one, of course, it's a series, so you can keep going back and
Yes.
engaging.
Yes.
Second, I've seen my son actually sit in front of the computer and read all kinds of analysis about those stories.
Yes.
And therefore, I think the capacity to kind of build the bigger picture, create a larger story, put this thing in context. I think that's also something that may not be,
Yeah, and it
something.
requires all kinds of communities to come together. We cannot make the films and propagate and analyze. We cannot, so all kinds of people are have to be involved in order for it to reach that kind level of engagement for younger people.
Does the school system have a role to play? Because, some of these traditional stories, for example, fly in the face of the very structured education system that we have. It must be numeracy or language literacy, but these kind of, you know,
There are schools who are actually like just now I got a call from the Neve Foundation in
Ah,
Bangalore.
yeah, in Bangalore.
So
Yeah.
Kavita said, can you advise us to, can you be, be an interviewee for a student in 10th grade who is doing a project on the cowards? So I said, sure,
Yeah.
whatever. So there are schools like that, but they are very few and far between, but they are making their students conscious, of
Yeah.
what is going on and what all is there in the country that is there.
Yeah. One
It
of the
wasn't there before. I mean, this is much more now than it was before.
yeah.
So that way it's very encouraging.
Yeah. In fact, one of the post and during COVID, one of the things that we discovered in part of our education programs was that this whole uh, language and numeracy skill has to be embellished by a few other things. And, one is, of course, the do it yourself capacities, which we don't have in India. A bulb is fused, you'll call the electrician. The other thing is that, in terms of this storytelling and, letting people see their own diversity, culture, heritage, etc. It builds for a very confident human, I would say. And then we discovered that this is one piece that has to be added to our education system. And I think Neve is a classic case because she's been doing this kind of thing
For a long
for
time.
some years now, where she's always, attempting things like they say in Delhi, thoda sa hatke, you know,
Uh-huh.
which
So,
is great.
even NCRT of late, I must tell you that we did a project with NCRT in IIT Hyderabad. It was, we took it as a classroom project, and they had these stories written by writers on, for adult literacy. And they wanted them to, of course, they're very keen also for animation, but they don't have the budgets. So we made not graphic novels, comic strip like books, which will go online. And some 10, 12 stories were created by the students, and they're putting it online. So it was very interesting because the kind of discussions we had with the writers, because not everybody writes for that gap for the image to also speak. They write everything. So we had to tell them that, look, you can reduce these sentences in your text because we are already showing this. You don't have to say it. But it was a very interesting thing that, and I was surprised but I think this new education policy, they're trying to bring in, more visual, more narrative oriented learning rather than because if I saw that some people are trying to bring in design as a separate subject, but doesn't help. It actually has to become like art and design has to become a part of the whole learning system rather than yet another subject which the student has to learn.
So, what is holding animation back from becoming totally widespread, an essential tool in, you know, creating content which is relevant and propagating? What is that? What is holding it back?
What is holding it back? I wish I
Other,
knew.
other than the obvious answer that it's money and it's a few, people with skills, is there a fundamental capacity at
I
storytelling?
think the exposure, the more people are exposed to it and exposed to the various aspects of animation. Although I must say, now everything is animated. Whether you're opening your phone or you look at your watch, and there are some animated things everywhere. People are not even conscious that it is animation. But in terms of storytelling through animation, if it becomes more sort of why, as in people are exposed a lot more to it. For example, even having a channel, but students don't watch TV. No, this is the thing. So there has to be some platforms where these things become accessible. It's only when you're exposed to something that that you are curious about it and you want to know more and you want more of it. Like I never saw these films before. I went to NID, I saw so many of these films, and I got excited. So I'm sure this could happen to anyone, if they were exposed to more things, and the potential of, learning from a medium like this.
So, I was just thinking of AI. Just last week, we had a group of young, not so young, film people who have now started to create an AI platform where you kind of specify a few of the, boundaries. And so there was a thing saying, I want to go for a walk in a forest with, the sun streaming through the trees, and I see a bunch of deer, and it was so romantic. And it just went circled, and then pop, there
Give
was a
the
film. There was a film. It was, of course, about 30-35 seconds. But with that just two-line prompt, it created that film. So is that the future for animation too?
See, I'll never say that it is going to go away. Nothing is going to go away. Everything is, once it comes, it's here to stay. And maybe people will learn how to use it better. Right now, if you think about it, like if all I need is a few words, descriptions, and it pops something. If I say the same thing again, if say you say the same thing, will it pop the same image? I mean, there's some research has to be done, as to what is going on. Is that going to create a kind of a monoculture, therefore, what will happen into individual kind of things? But if you learn how to use it, like we used to do animation by hand, every drawing we used to make, frame by frame. We are not complaining now anymore, because we can use some software where, we have to just give the end and beginning position, and it can move, and we can then tweak it whichever way we want. And it's very helpful. So I think it depends on what you're willing to give up. If you're willing to give up even your thought process, then so be it. But at least the labor, if it can save, that's very good.
In fact, many moons ago, when I was living in Ahmedabad,
Hmm.
there used to be a small center in that there was a Nehru garden or something like that, if I
Yes.
remember. And
Mhm.
there used to, people from NID actually, they used to make these little books with a, fly, how it uh, passes disease.
Flip
And
books. Flip
huh?
flip books.
Yeah, those flip
Oh,
books.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
was amazing. And I kind of was fascinated by the individual who was able to
Every
visualize one
drawing.
frame to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's amazing, that we have million, like we see in Sarmaya, our objects. There are, every object has a story, if not more than one story.
More than once,
Yeah,
exactly.
we have coins, and each coin has a story. So it's always our endeavor to see how best we can tell these stories. What are the medium to use, appropriate medium. We found animation particularly exciting.
Yes.
Uh, the only thing we struggle with is, the necessary bridging of the capacity to understand the story and communicate it well.
But even
There,
things like medical animation, for example, how the body works. Uh, there, I think that AI would be very useful, because, which animator wants to sit and animate every, blood vessel moving or something? It would be so nice, to be able to understand how the body operates. So many of these things, how a plant grows, and so many ways in which I feel AI can be used. We,
so
we
in the,
hmm.
sorry, go ahead.
Instead of think of, oh, it is going to write poetry for me, which, some people are boasting about that. I gave a few words, it made poetry. I wouldn't want to stop making poetry myself. I would rather it did all the donkey work for me than doing, the more artistic stuff. But that's my take. And that's how I would probably use it.
So in the Bheel movie that you made, you actually had the artist make all those.
Not all of them, now what we do, he makes the paintings and we scan them, and then in Photoshop we're able to segregate the various limbs and things like that and rig them. And then, because I wanted every dot to animate, in that you might have seen
Yeah.
every dot is moving, so we made a library of these moving dots, and then we composed them as those patterns, so that everything was forever moving, because they told me that each dot represents an ancestor. So then
Oh,
I felt that, if it's each dot is an ancestor, I cannot make an ancestor into a pattern, a static thing. So we will move them. Of course, my animators were really, they didn't believe me. They thought I was joking, that every dot will move. I said, no, you have to find a way. So we wrote an algorithm by which we could, have them moving in all sorts of ways throughout the film.
so
So
fabulous.
yeah, so there we are using technology. There's no other way I could have done this film if I did not have access to the softwares that we had.
So where would you recommend the top three schools in India for this skill?
Right. There's quite a few now, but I would say definitely go to NID, IDC, because I know them very well. Also Srishti is excellent. Um, mm, there's some really wonderful films coming from there. I've seen some nice films come out of MIT, also Pune,
Yeah.
and Nirma in Ahmedabad. So, and UPS, they are doing some stuff over there. So there are quite a few schools that are teaching animation. But the top three, I would say, would be, the IITs and the, NID and Srishti.
Okay, wonderful. So a youngster who is wanting to consider this, you reckon this is a career option?
It's a career option, as in, if not if you can do 2, 3 jobs at a time.
2, 3 jobs or 2, 3 projects?
2, 3 projects also. Yeah, I think I was recently in Annecy. I was invited as a jury member, and I went there after many years. I had been there earlier, but that time I didn't see so many Indian filmmakers, there. This time I saw so many young people who were pitching for their projects, and they're pitching for, live action. I mean, sorry, feature films, feature animation. They're pitching for TV series. So much confidence, so much talent. I was really happy.
Oh,
So
that's great to
I
hear.
think there is, and I met, like, there is one very young, upcoming, very lovely filmmaker, Upamanyu Bhattacharya. You see his film Wade, and now he's working on a feature film, for which he was able to raise the money. He said, I want to pay everyone. He's a very sorted person, and he's also very excited about traditional art and things like that. And his I think his film, which is called Heirloom, which is going to come now soon, he's going to start the production soon. He was telling me that it's again, he's very excited about the dying textile mills and things like that. And so the whole film is about a family business and things. So these young people these days are very sharp and sorted. I think they will really know how to get going.
Great to hear. I mean,
Even like Vaibhav, he just finished his film, animation film, which has gone to so many film theaters. It's being shown. It's amazing.
okay, one last question. What's
Yes.
keeping you busy in Chennai?
What's keeping me busy in Chennai?
Oh,
Well,
no, no, Chennai means out of Chennai. I mean,
out.
what are you working on?
I just finished a film, an animated film, which is based on my mother's memories of her childhood in Sindh and the partition. And I've done it in, again, fabric and watercolors, and to tell her story. So I've just finished it. So I'm like trying to send it to festivals and places for people to see it.
We have a scroll in Sarmaya which talks of the march of a British force to Sindh.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So it's beautiful. It's got some 14 or 15 panels, but they're
Okay.
all, it's one like a accordion. It opens up and it shows the full extent of army on the march. So
Wow.
there's khansamas, and there are malishwalas, and there is a banker, and
I would
there
love
is,
to see this. So,
yeah, I'll share the link with you.
oh,
There you can see that it's just beautiful, because it's in color. So it has every uh, role that is necessary and part of a army on the march. Yeah.
wow. Fantastic.
And we have coins, which the mint is called Urdu Zafar Kari, which means basically mint on the move.
Ah,
So the cantonment, which was on the move, had a mobile mint,
my
and
goodness.
it's
They're just
interesting
minting the money.
because you have to pay soldiers, and most of them are like freelancers, mercenaries, and they just get on their horse and leave if you didn't pay. So you have to
Yeah.
pay them.
Wow.
So it's amazing.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you so much, Gina. It was wonderful speaking to you.
Thank you, Paul.
And I'm hoping to, catch you in Chennai sometime. And if you're coming to
Absolutely.
Bombay, do come to the archive.
I
Love to have you over.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.